Coming up today, strength, flexibility, and a calm mind. All things you'll find in a Pilates instructor, and Kaylee Schiller excels at it. We share the terrifying diagnosis that had her using the skills that make her so good at her job face the toughest battle of her life. Good morning, I'm Jessica Lovell, and welcome to the Morning Medical Update. What would you do if you were told that you had just 90 days to live? Kaylee Schiller was in end-stage liver failure. She went home to her babies and waited and hoped that her care team would find a liver donor that could save her life. And they did, just in time.
Jason, wow, high energy, type A personality, loved sports, coached little league team for a while, a basketball team. He loved cooking. He was a volunteer at 2 different summer camps.
Sharon Sherfick's memories of her son Jason are vivid, but she entered into a nightmare the morning she got the call that Jason was on life support. He was so special to so many, but to Mom Sharon, he was like no other.
I don't know if you're familiar with the song Tim McGraw did back in 2016 called Humble and Kind. He printed that and carried that in his wallet, and that was pretty much how he lived life until his death.
Jason's family made the difficult decision to take him off life support, but fate would find a way to bring Jason back, in a sense. Jason was an organ donor.
2, push it all the way back, squeeze your glutes at the top.
Meet Kaylee Schiller. She's a highly sought-after Pilates instructor. She runs a successful business, tending to some pretty high-profile clients.
2, bring it all the way back in, hold, hold, hold.
She's also a wife and mom to a 1- and 4-year-old. So fatigue, well, it just comes with the territory. But as the fatigue lingered, followed by persistent nausea, she knew something was up.
My doctor called me with the results of the blood tests and told me that my liver enzymes were highly elevated and I needed to go to the closest emergency room.
Her condition rapidly progressed.
So they put me in an ambulance and sent me to the University of Kansas Health System,
where Medical Director of Liver Transplantation, Dr. Ryan Taylor, and his team were waiting to run more tests.
So the following day he came back in and told me that I had autoimmune hepatitis and I was in acute liver failure end stage. My MELD score ranged around a 28. So with that knowledge, it pretty much told me I only had 90 days to live.
The team tried steroids over the next couple of weeks to try and reverse some of the liver damage.
I went from this right here, healthy, fit, to barely being able to walk down the stairs. I had tremors, I would shake. I gained 30 pounds of fluid from the liver disease and from the prednisone.
But the steroids didn't work. Kaylee soon learned she'd need a liver transplant. With time not on her side, she went home to wait for the call that a deceased organ donor had been found. And on October 2nd, 2019, the same day Jason was taken off life support, Kaylee got the call.
There are no words that can put this. To know that you get to live because somebody else has passed away is a very challenging concept to deal with.
Kaylee received Jason's liver and has made a full recovery. She is back to her kids and her business and says she's honoring Jason's gift by living her very best life.
It's just a chapter, of my life, of my journey, which has changed my life for the better and just given me a completely different aspect of how precious life is.
She also gained Sharon, another mom, as Kaylee puts it.
She is the most giving human being I've ever met in my entire life.
The feeling is mutual.
It was reinforced on our first meeting when I got to hug her. There was just something about that connection. She's been a lifesaver for me. I never would have been able to deal with his death as I have without her being there.
And we're so glad to have Kaylee joining us today, along with her transplant hepatologist, Dr. Ryan Taylor. How is it to see Kaylee doing so well here with us today?
It's truly amazing. This is really just gives me such a rise and helps me help take care of patients and help motivate us to see this great success.
A lifesaver, that's what Sharon calls you. What's that feel like to be called the lifesaver in this story?
I mean, I don't think I really am the one who was the lifesaver in this situation by any means. So, yeah, it's more her.
What does Jason mean to you?
Everything. I mean, I wouldn't be here today if I wasn't given that precious gift of life. So he's my sense of, I carry his legacy, I carry who he was with me. It gives me more of a purpose in this world. Does that make sense? So yeah, he's very, very important to who I am and what I do with my life.
We see you there teaching Pilates to some Chiefs players, by the way, and running this very busy business. And then we see you laying in that bed. We see you here today. How are you feeling today compared to those worst days back then?
Great. Better than ever. Better than even prior to getting a transplant.
How long after that transplant were you back to work and feeling good again?
I would say it took a complete year to feel really, really healthy, but I did go back to the studio 2 months after the surgery, just part-time, and then full-time after 3.
Dr. Taylor, Kaylee was diagnosed with what's called autoimmune hepatitis. What is that? What causes it?
It's a disease where your own body starts attacking your liver cells, and that can lead to inflammation and eventually damage so much of the liver's not working, and then you can actually develop acute liver failure like Kaylee did.
Would she have known she had this? This comes out of nowhere?
It can come very unexpectedly for people. Usually the first sign of problems are on blood tests, and so if we get blood tests early, sometimes we catch patients before they get as sick as Kaylee did. But it really can be asymptomatic until you just get very, very sick at the end part of it.
It's scary because Kaylee's just a busy working mom. Some of those symptoms can go unnoticed, I would
Absolutely.
imagine. Go over some of those symptoms. What were you feeling other than that fatigue?
Yeah, fatigue was first, which I didn't take seriously because I am a mom of 2. At the time, my boys were 1 and 3, and then running a business. But it was about a month later, after the fatigue, where I started getting really nauseous. And that's kind of what caught me off guard, thinking something may be going on here.
So is that a sign of the autoimmune hepatitis? But what's the sign of this liver failure? I mean,
just generalized fatigue is the most common symptom patients have, and then the nausea, and once they get really sick, and they can start to turn jaundiced, and that's when a lot of people seek medical attention.
So 90 days, that must be shocking. You're told that that's how long you had to live without a transplant, a life-saving transplant. What's going through your mind when you hear this?
To be completely honest, not a lot. You become numb, and I'm a very much a fight really hard survival person, so I kind of like held on tight and got into survival mode, basically.
How did you handle that information with your family? You go home. I can't even imagine what those conversations are like.
There was no sign that this was over. We didn't speak of that, and I wouldn't let anybody around me speak of that. So it was, this is going to happen. We've got to hang on tight and get through it.
And the fact that you're sitting here today is probably why that is.
Yeah.
Which I love that. I find this interesting, Dr. Taylor, because Kaylee was at another hospital before she was sent here, and they called you, Dr. Taylor, you specifically, to treat her. What resources do you and your team have here at the University of Kansas Health System that made this the exact place that she needed to be in your hands?
Oh, that's so kind. We here at the University of Kansas have a liver transplant program. We're the only one in the state of Kansas that has a liver transplant program. So as sick as Kaylee was, we knew that she needed that. And we have the largest team of liver providers in the region. And so this for us was important to be able to offer her care.
So we have a living liver program here at the University of Kansas Health System now. We did not at the time of that transplant. Would she have been a good candidate for a living liver donor, or was there just not enough time when you're talking 90 days?
So she was unfortunately just too sick to get part of a liver, is what we use for a living donor liver transplant. So she needed a full liver to have the best chances of survival, but time was also against us.
Okay, so Kaylee was able to receive Jason's gift of a full liver. How long does this last? How long will this organ last?
Well, there's no expiration date after you receive a liver transplant, so I want patients to live the fullest life that they can. Sometimes diseases can come back. We have to consider that, but with the medications that we use to prevent rejection, most patients leave a very full and fulfilling life, and we don't have to worry about losing their liver again.
So So does this mean that Kaylee still has autoimmune hepatitis? Could this still impact the new liver or other parts of her body?
Right now, there's no evidence that she has autoimmune hepatitis. Unfortunately, it can come back in a small percentage of patients, so we watch her labs very carefully, react to those, and the interesting thing is the medicines we give to prevent rejection also treat autoimmune hepatitis, so she's getting additional treatment for that right now.
So Kaylee, you formed a great relationship with Sharon. That's Jason's mother, who we saw here in the video piece. She shared with us why organ donation was so important to him.
Many years ago, Jason had lost a friend because there was no available liver for him. And so when his friend passed away, he signed up to become an organ donor. Jason couldn't save his friend who passed away, but he saved the life of someone else in his passing. So his death was not in vain.
How often do you get to chat with Sharon, and any plans to see her soon? Because I know you guys try to get to see each other often.
Often. I mean, I'll even send her little texts and stuff, and and they always come through. When they drive through Kansas City, they always stop and see us, so.
And you guys just send text messages when you're kind of thinking of each other throughout the day. She mentioned that sometimes she'll be having moments and then she'll get a text message from you, and it kind of just helps push her through.
Yeah.
Pretty special relationship, huh?
Yeah. And I needed that relationship too, because I did. When I got the call, I grieved the death of this person more than I had even thought I would. And that was kind of like the number one thing. Yes, of course I was excited to get the phone call, but there was such a sadness inside of me. So getting able to learn about my donor and get in a relationship with his family I needed that as well.
Well, let's talk about that a bit, because here you are, trying to just get better. Dr. Taylor's thinking, that's what I want you to do. I want you just to focus on you and get better, get home to your family. But you're right, you're grieving a whole other human being that is the whole reason why you're here.
Right.
How did you make it through that? I know you started with you wrote a letter to Sharon, and you're trying to do that. How did you find balance in all of that mentally?
I mean, I went to therapy. I needed some help working through everything because everything was very fast. Like I said, I didn't really process it all. I just hung on tight to survive the moment. So therapy, doing things like this helps me because then I'm helping others. And then, of course, forming that relationship with his parents was essential for getting through this.
I bet. Dr. Taylor, what do you find with patients? Just that, I would imagine that journey is different for everyone.
It is, but it's very surprising how many patients have to balance this happiness and joy. They're feeling that they have another chance at life, but knowing what it took for someone to be that organ donor. And for some people, it's just always present on their mind and part of their health journey.
And let's take a moment just to talk about organ donation in general and just how important checking that box and just being part of the organ donation program and learning about it and asking questions about it is. I mean, these are what we call the heroes.
Yes, absolutely. No, I think it's wonderful to know, Jason had talked to, saw that firsthand and what that importance is. Sometimes people don't think about this until it hits close to home, but all people have to do is talk to their family, make their wishes known, and sign that donor card on their driver's license.
Be sure to ask your questions. You can use the chat on YouTube or Facebook. You can email the Medical News Network. All of that information is right there on your screen. So Kaylee, your transplant had a few hiccups. Let's talk about that. Walk us through what you discovered after you woke up from the surgery.
Right. So when I woke up, which was actually the following day, I was informed that I had a blood clot that went into my lung. And so I had a pulmonary embolism, and then that blood clot went into my heart. And I have a PFO, which is a flap in the heart, which I didn't know I had either. And that flap opened, and part of that blood clot went into my brain, and I had 4 minor strokes. And then it dissipated. I believe that then they stopped the surgery, took me down to radiology, inserted an IVC filter, and kept me sedated for a while to make sure I was going to be okay.
So, Dr. Taylor, do you see complications like this often?
This is very atypical complication, so we're so thankful that Kaylee did so well with it, but this is not something we see often.
Well, and again, another reason why we're glad that she was here, because I would imagine you had all hands on deck.
Absolutely, that was a very big moment when all that happened, and to get her the care she needed to fight through that.
That blood clot, did that have something to do with the liver failure? Totally unrelated? What do you make of that?
It's probably had a combination to do with the liver failure and just how sick she was and everything that she was going through, and people who have autoimmune disease can have higher risk of clotting, so that probably was a factor too.
Okay, Kaylee, when I met with you, you had spoke so highly of Dr. Taylor, how his calm demeanor,
Yes.
which we see on this program quite often, and you're not the first one to mention how great Dr. Taylor is. Dr. Taylor, how do you handle something though like this? You meet somebody like Kaylee, and I know you speak so highly of her when you told us about her, but how do you handle having these conversations with someone? You have somebody like Kaylee who says, I'm not end stage liver failure, she's not hearing it. 90 days to live, I'm not hearing it. But you have to have some of these real conversations.
Absolutely.
How do you work through that with a patient?
First and foremost, I always treat people like I would want to be treated, so that's always important when I meet a patient for the first time. I recognize that I'm seeing them probably on one of the worst days of their lives, that they're facing all this, that I have to tell them not only their life is at risk, that they need a liver transplant, and so that's very overwhelming, and we recognize that. But I also recognize we have to be positive, so it's important to be truthful with patients, share with them the medical knowledge, but you also have to be there and be positive, because we know what the journey's going to take. There can be ups and downs, and you have to be there and be a positive resource for the patient.
Well, let's get to some questions from our viewers this morning, if we can. Jean has a question. What is the cause of this disease, and is it hereditary?
That's a great question. So we do believe there could be some hereditary component with autoimmune diseases in patients' families, but ultimately it's something in the environment, and sometimes medications are a common cause of triggering this, your immune system to start attacking your liver.
Jeremy says, I heard liver transplants are some of the most complex transplants to do. If that's the case, what makes them so complex?
There's just so many things you have to take into consideration, but one of the important things is when you have a surgery and you're a healthy person, the rest of your body is healthy. When we take a patient down for a liver transplant, their body is very, very sick and have multiple systems that aren't working well. So we have to navigate trying to do a complex operation at the same time working with a patient who's very, very sick. And as Kaylee's case, you know, she had a blood clot. This is something that, you know, a healthy person may not have when they have surgery.
So Kristen over at Gift of Life says, way to go, Kaylee and KU. We love you both.
Thank you, Kristen.
Little shout out to you both. Jill asks, Kaylee said that she was tired and had occasional nausea, which can be normal for a busy mom and young kids. How do you know when it's just, that it's not just typical fatigue?
That's a great question, and most patients with liver disease, when we first diagnose it, may have no symptoms. So if you start to feel ill, not quite yourself, the first step is to go see your primary doctor, and with simple blood tests, we can get an idea if your liver's sick or not.
Marie asks if you have to avoid sushi after a transplant, something about raw fish and hepatitis C.
Well, there's certain types of organisms that are high risk with uncooked seafood, so because of the immunosuppression, we have to be extra careful.
Lisa wants to know if Kaylee spoke to a therapist during all of this. She has a two-part question, but let's talk a little bit more about that, the mental health aspect of it, and how important that is, and to not bypass that part of recovery.
Right. So I did after. I didn't during, because I didn't really want to talk to anybody.
Okay.
I just wanted to, you know, look forward. But definitely after, I went, and I have a therapist that I've seen for a while, and brought a whole bunch of new information to her. I remember that first time, but yeah, and so very important to talk a lot, to do whatever you possibly need to.
Is there any part of the process that was like a sticking point for you that was really hard for you to get through? That
probably the actual surgery, especially when I was here, because it was so, I didn't understand. It took me a while to process everything that happened, so that was the most challenging, as to why am I now seeing a cardiologist? Why do I have a neurologist now? So kind of working through that.
And you also have a profession that keeps you very physical. Was
Yes.
that a struggle for you, just the fact that you had to maybe take it easy a little bit?
Not really, because I mean, I walked as soon as I got home. Well, even the first time when I was in the hospital, I walked the hospital.
Okay.
So having that actually helped me. It's therapy for me. just moving my body. That helped me process a lot of things.
Dr. Taylor, does that make for a good patient, somebody who's willing to get up and get
Oh,
moving?
absolutely. I mean, Kaylee is one of the healthiest people you can be, and so it's been very refreshing to see her recovery in this, and she performs at such a high level that we knew we had to get her back to 100% afterwards.
Exactly. You're like, no, very little downtime, Dr. Taylor, for her. Lisa also wanted to know, how did you tell your kids what was going on? That's a really good question to ask, because mom's busy going and doing all sorts of things, and all of a sudden she has to have this downtime. What are those conversations like?
So at the time, my children were 1 and 3. Of course, the 1-year-old didn't understand. The 3-year-old kind of did, but not to the level that I wanted him to understand, if that makes sense, because he's 3 and I didn't want him to have to process all these emotions. We have a big family, so he was either with one or the other grandparents, or surrounded by love. I don't know. I don't think he felt it. Does that make sense? Like, yeah. Too much to process that big stuff. And for me, I was going to be okay. So I didn't want to give that to him.
What kind of support was required during all of this?
A lot.
A lot.
A lot.
Your spouse?
My spouse, my clients, my instructors, my friends, the rest of my family, my parents, his parents, everybody. I was surrounded by more love than I even knew that was possible. I mean, the outpour of people just came out to help us. It was wonderful.
Becca wants to know, how long after the deceased donor dies does the liver need to be placed inside the recipient?
Hopefully as quickly as possible, but no more than 8 to 12 hours.
Really? Okay.
So once we get the liver procured, the clock is ticking, and try to get the transplant done as soon as possible.
What do you want the biggest takeaway to be from a conversation like this? Kaylee's story in particular, and just people understanding and knowing about organ donation and just the importance of it.
Absolutely. I think the first important thing to learn from Kaylee's story, if you start to feel sick or ill, it's good to get medical care, get those blood tests so we can get an idea if something's going on. But ultimately, Kaylee wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the gift of life from Jason. So organ donors are so critical for the success and survival of patients who get the bad luck of getting severe liver disease.
Where do people go to learn more about it? I mean, we know people can sign up for their driver's license and things like that. That's what we've always heard about. But if people just want to know more about becoming an organ donor, how do they find out more information about it? Where can they go?
Lots of resources are online, so that's a good place to start. And we're very blessed here in Kansas City to have an organization, Gift of Life, that's just very involved with the community and reaches a lot of our young people and talk about organ donation. So there's local resources as well. What would your message be, Kaylee, just about your story, and what do you want people to know and really take away here today?
Yeah, first I would definitely want to say, trust your instincts. If you're not feeling well, please communicate that. Go see your doctor. Take care of you. You're important. You matter. It's not me second. It's me first. Because if you're not healthy, you can't take care of others. So, especially as a mom, I really want to address that with other mothers out there. Again, I just blame my fatigue on being busy, but sometimes there's something else going on. So just seek the right person to make sure you're okay, and stay healthy and move your body and eat healthy. But I'll keep going.
Just keep going. And you've just been so great, though, about just sharing your story. This is not the first place. This is not your first stop, and it won't be your last, because you've really been great about sharing your story. And I know, Dr. Taylor, how great is it, though, for Kaylee to be, and how important is that for patients like her to be sharing her story?
I mean, it's absolutely important to know there's real people that you may not even know in the community that are doing great things, that can have serious things happen to them and really bounce back. I mean, Kaylee's made lemonade from lemons here, and just really such a great thing to see her in the community and be such an advocate for organ donation.
Well, it's great to bring you two back together, a little reunion. Appreciate you both sharing your story. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks to our guests for being here. Thanks to our viewers for being here and asking your questions today. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Coming up tomorrow on the Morning Medical Update, the same cancer that killed her father and grandfather was coming for Isabel at just 17 years old. Her survival depended on drastic surgery. I'm Jessica Lovell on the next Morning Medical Update, removing the stomach to save her life, how Isabel's adapting to her new normal, plus the importance of knowing your family history. Tuesday at 8.
Subscribe to our Morning Medical Update and Open Mics with Dr. Stites podcast. Now everywhere podcasts are available.